Welcome into the Rockies Insider. I'm your Rockies Insider, Patrick Lyons, discussing Willi Castro and his 2-year deal with the Colorado Rockies. Where's he going to play? Will he be starting on opening day? Can he get back to his all-star form from 2024? We've got some major contracts getting signed over this past weekend. Some interesting additions to the World Baseball Classic team. The Hall of Fame class of 2026 is about to get announced in a mere hours. So much going on. And the Denver Broncos, of course, going on to the AFC Championship game. They'll play next Sunday at 1 p.m. against the New England Patriots with somebody as their quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. Wish you nothing but the best of luck. The biggest Broncos game in quite some time, a decade. I would say so. Felix, first one, checking in. As always, appreciate you, buddy, dropping by. If you do have questions in the chat, I feel like it's been a little while since I've done a live show over on YouTube. So if you've got questions, there's been a lot of transactions. Of course, if you're listening to the Rockies Insider podcast, you've heard my takes on all of these moves that have gone on throughout this off season. But this is your chance to ask me anything you'd like while I am live on YouTube. So let's jump right into Willi Castro. Not official yet, but it's been reported from multiple outlets. It's a 2-year, $12.8 million contract with Colorado, the first multi-year contract the Rockies have given out guaranteed to a free agent since Kris Bryant in 2022. Well, just the second since 2019. Before that, you'd have to go to Daniel Murphy. And we know Colorado right now loves spending on super utility players. They did it last offseason with Kyle Farmer. It was 2017 when it was Alexi Amarista, which was a fun one at the time. But again, this deal not yet official. Somebody will have to come off of the 40-man roster in order to make room for Willi Castro, other than the guys that were recently picked up on waivers before Paul DePodesta and Josh Burns started running the show there at 2001 Blake Street in Denver. Troy Johnston and Garrett Acton probably have to be towards the top of that list, as they might be able to fly through waivers. Blaine Krim is another one of those players that has had his name sort of bandied about on the fringes of this roster, but he's needed as insurance right now as the first baseman, since they really don't have anybody else. I don't believe that it will be him going into the start of this season, but you want to hold on to him at least until you do get that first baseman signed in free agency or acquired via trade. That could also be a solution. But if you are left with quite literally no first baseman on the roster, and it's not believable enough that Charlie Condon will be your opening day first baseman, then any negotiations you get in with a first baseman, whether it's Rhys Hoskins or Luis Arraez, that's going to be used against you, and you're not going to have the upper hand. There's a couple other relievers like Luis Peralta and Jeff Criswell, who's trying to come back from Tommy John surgery, who I think also could find themselves getting designated for assignment to make room for Willi Castro. But this is an interesting signing, especially at $12.8 million. That's certainly no chump change, as we are going to now see that Castro is the 5th highest paid player on the Rockies right now. And if Antonio Senzatella doesn't make the opening day roster and is no longer around, go ahead and bump up Castro a spot. And he's the 4th most expensive member of the Colorado Rockies. In the chat, am I going to Rockies Fest? Absolutely. I will be there. Not sure if I'm going to get there early at 8:30 a.m. and check out the garage sale. I will check out the garage sale, no doubt about it, to see what they've got, particularly the game used memorabilia or the team issued items. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but my fitted hat size is 7 3/8. There was one that was available last year. I was on a budget, and it had the number 18 written in chalk. Sure enough, that's Ryan Feltner. And when I talked to him in spring training, I learned that, yeah, that was his cap for Labor Day. So it's a great event. So I will be there. If you're going to be out, reach out on social media. Definitely looking forward to meeting up with y'all. But Willi Castro, Not sure if he's going to be official before Rockies Fest, if he'll even be in Denver. I think the Rockies would love for him to show up and represent. Dude's only 28 years old. Let's think about that, what he's been able to do in getting to free agency that young. And before a hiccup with the Cubs last year when he was traded from the Twins to Chicago at the deadline, a Cubs team in which he still did make the postseason roster with, dude was worth 5.3 wins above replacement over the previous 4 seasons. So he's been one of the better utility players in all of baseball. Has gone to the postseason 2 of the past 3 years. And when the Cubs acquired him, they gave up 2 really good quality pitchers, one of whom MLB Pipeline ranked as the 8th best prospect in the Cubs system. The other was actually number 30 on Baseball America. So Cubs gave up a fair amount for a utility player that they thought was going to play a much larger role on their postseason run than turned out he was. But Astros, Yankees, Mariners were all listed as clubs that did have interest in Willi Castro at the trade deadline last year. He's from Puerto Rico, and he is the first Puerto Rican-born player since now, of course, Danny Gonzalez, third base coach, is from Puerto Rico, but the first Willi Castro will be the first Rocky from Puerto Rico, born in Puerto Rico, since Noel Cuevas back in 2019. Noel Cuevas 2018-19. Castro is going to be just the 7th Puerto Rican-born player for the Rockies ever. Not very many. You'd think a country that's so well represented with a lot of great Major League Baseball players as Puerto Rico. Not a ton have been Rockies. Before Noel Cuevas, it was Will Nieves in 2012. Then you'd have to go back nearly a decade to Jose Hernandez in 2003, Sandy Alomar Jr. in 2002, and then only 2 others ever. Edgar Clemente from 98 to 99. Now, some of you say, wait a minute, Clemente, that name sounds familiar. Also, if you're a hardcore Rockies fan, you remember that name because he was a top 100 prospect in the 90s. In fact, a lot of his early baseball cards say Edgar Velasquez, which was his name at the time until he eventually adopted his uncle, Roberto Clemente's name. So yes, the nephew of Roberto Clemente did play for the Colorado Rockies, something that you might not know because the Rockies, unfortunately, do not have a team Hall of Fame. Cubs, Cardinals, many other teams have their own team Hall of Fames to honor many of the forgotten players and moments. The Rockies absolutely need to correct this. And the first ever Rocky, born in Puerto Rico, Omar Olivares, back in 1995. Castro is an interesting story for multiple reasons. Born in Puerto Rico, but moved to North Carolina at a very early age. And his father, Liliano, was signed to the Detroit Tigers back in 1987, had an arm injury the next year that forced him to retire, and then eventually got a job coaching with the Tigers in their minor league system for 8 years, worked for the Mets for 15 years. And Willie and his father are very close. They text after every game. I think they've never gone more than 2 days or 2 games without texting. So that's a big one. Austin in the chat. How you doing, buddy? Papa Man 647. Welcome. Glad you have your board. If you got any questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat over here live on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on the podcast side of things, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. That can go a really long way. And also jump into the YouTube side of things, even if it's after the fact. When you hear it, ask a question, leave a comment. I will be able to see that. It goes to the top of my list, and I always respond to all the comments on all my videos over on YouTube. So Castro, as I mentioned, was an all-star very recently, back in 2024 with the Twins, was also their Heart and Hustle winner. And you like this stat. We all remember Charlie Blackmon getting on base by hook or by crook, getting hit by pitches a lot. Well, he actually broke a Twins record for most hit by pitches, HBPs, in 2024. 21 times dude got plunked. And in that season, he actually became the first player in baseball history, get this, with at least 25 games at 5 different positions: second, short, third, left, and center field. That's what the Rockies have just purchased themselves, the services of one Willi Castro. And then how about this? In that 2024 season, he was one of 7 players that year with at least 30 doubles, 5 triples, 10 homers, 50 RBI, 80 runs scored, and 10 stolen bases. Sure, that's cherry picking, but those are all really good numbers. And when you hear about who else was in that class, you're going to say, dang, Willi Castro had himself a season in 2024. That list included Bobby Witt Jr., Ellie De La Cruz, Jarren Duran, Gunnar Henderson, Shohei Ohtani, and the Cardinals' Mason Wynn. And now the Rockies, Willi Castro. As I mentioned, postseason 2 of the past 3 years. He can pitch. He's pitched in each of the last 3 seasons. Make all the jokes you want there. But he does have a career 5.79 ERA, which was better than the team ERA last year. So, okay. Pickled Nose, thanks for joining the chat. Who's going to be the DH this year? Great question. There won't be one. And by that, I mean a lot of teams around baseball use the DH as an off day. It's just a spot where you're getting somebody in the lineup, but you're taking them off their feet, keeping their bat alive and active, but now they don't have to go and play the field. And I think we're going to see Hunter Goodman get a bulk of those starts. I think he'll probably play a good 50 games as the DH, and then there could be somebody else in and around 50. And then just, again, whoever else you want based on the matchup will be the DH that day, whoever you don't want to be in the field. But I think, 50 games is not really a primary DH, but who will have the most starts as a DH? I think it probably will be Hunter Goodman as they look to keep him sharp and keep him fresh as they did last year. And you saw down the stretch, he did not wilt in those dog days of summer. His first year as a full-time catcher since becoming a professional, most games he had ever caught in a season, even going back to when he was at the University of Memphis. And he was still able to continue to post throughout August and September. And they were able to keep him sharp because they kept his bat in the lineup, but he didn't have to catch. Braxton Fulford, tons of value. I've got some thoughts on him this week and why he could actually bring back a lot as a trade chip for the Rockies if they were looking to do that. I don't know who else they got coming up from behind other than Brett Sullivan as a non-roster invite in AAA. I think they need to do a little better job developing their catchers. Cole Messina, he'll be there. Probably he'll be ready next year or this time and before the 2027 season. But I think Goodman's going to get a bulk of those DH starts. Willi Castro, as I said, can pitch, can play a lot of positions, as we know. He can defend. He was actually a finalist for the Gold Glove Award at the utility position in 2024. Dude can hit from both sides of the plate from 2023 to 2024. He had the 4th highest on-base percentage of any American League switch hitter behind only Adley Rutschman, Jose Ramirez, and Luis Rengifo. And I love this too. And this checks off one of the boxes that the Rockies love. All teams love it, but the Rockies in the past have really stated how much they love having a player that feels like is a coach. And a lot of players just do that naturally and intrinsically. Of course, Willi Castro's father being a coach for a very long time, he's seen the game from that side. But he was actually asked by the Twins communication department before the start of the 2025 season, if you retired from baseball tomorrow, what would your job or hobby be? And Castro said, quote, not being a manager, probably being a staff member. I do something, but not manager. Probably an infield coach, outfield coach, one of those two. It's going to be hard, but I probably can do both at once. So this is a guy that is, he's a lifer. He is a baseball lifer and is going to be able to contribute, I think, a lot to a lot of these younger players on the team. And I think one of his best abilities that he does have is availability. Only 3 stints on the injured list in his 7-year career. Now you're going to look at his baseball reference page or his page on Fangraphs and say he doesn't have a ton of games played. Well, it's because he's been somewhat of a bench player, a utility player. So while he's played a lot more games than some other utility players, the plate appearances and the at-bats aren't always there, right? Because you can play in a game, be a late defensive replacement, and get 1 to no at-bats or 1 to no plate appearances. So his plate appearances might be skewed by how many games he's played, but he's healthy. That's a big one. Like I said, 3 IL stints in 7 years and none since 2023. What is his role for next season? That remains in question. Certainly, he might be best bouncing around, playing a lot of different positions, giving a day off to players, whether Brenton Doyle needs a day off in center. Okay, Willi can be there. Is Kyle Karros going to be the opening day starting third baseman? If not, you got Willi Castro giving him a day. He can play at second base. And when Ezekiel Tovar needs a day off, he's there at shortstop. He can do a lot of different things positionally. But I think one of the biggest roles that he is going to have early on with the Rockies, and his role, he's filling it right now, even without being an official member of the roster, is he is going to apply just the right amount of pressure on the young players on this roster that are trying to win a spot. Because whether he is the starting third baseman on opening day or the starting second baseman on opening day, his presence allows you to have a three-man competition for what might only be one spot. Maybe there's two spots, but maybe only one spot, because Tyler Freeman, more likely than not, is going to have a place on this roster, predominantly as a second baseman. I think I very well feel like Tyler Freeman's going to be the starting second baseman on opening day. And if he's not, that's okay. Freeman can bounce around to right field, play some second base. Not sure if his arm is strong enough to play third base, but you can have a three-man competition with the young guys on this roster between third baseman Kyle Karros and second baseman Adi Alamador and Ryan Ritter. And we know Ryan Ritter can play multiple positions in the infield. So he is just a young Willi Castro. And it remains to be seen. Maybe he even picks up a mitt to play a little bit of the outfield. That could increase and improve his value. We haven't heard that yet. A couple years ago, we heard that with Alan Trejo, that maybe he'd pick up an outfielder's mitt to really, again, increase his value to the Rockies and to the roster. That never happened. And if it did, maybe it happened behind closed doors and they didn't like what they saw. But since we haven't heard that about Ryan Ritter, doesn't mean A, it can't happen. And B, if it doesn't come to fruition that we see Ryan Ritter in the outfield just a little bit, maybe that's because the plans are to keep him as the starting second baseman, or rather make him the starting second baseman on opening day. For Karros, you might want him to get more at-bats in AAA. He had 64 plate appearances in Albuquerque last year, 154 plate appearances with Colorado. So how the rule works for having rookie eligibility, you do have to have under 130 at-bats over the course of your first season, or of course of a couple seasons. And we had 137 at-bats. Kyle Karros is not eligible for the Rookie of the Year award. Certainly, he feels like a guy that just showed up, not eligible. It's one of the reasons why you won't see him on any top 30 list for the Rockies this year, or at least any list worth any value, right? You need to know who is a prospect still, who has rookie status, and who doesn't. You can be a young player that has a ton of upside that we still don't know what that upside is going to finish at. But you either have rookie eligibility or you don't. And the prospect lists are exclusively for players who are purely minor leaguers, or those who still have that rookie eligibility. So we'll see. We'll see where that ends up playing out with Willi Castro. But I think this was a nice addition that's going to help the roster grow over the next couple years. And the kind of deal that I think the Rockies need to find more of as they make the bridge to getting back to relevancy, I think, more than anything. Let's go ahead and check the chat. Lux, what's going on? Good to see you. Man, when will they announce Tovar will be playing in the WBC? Yeah, we should be hearing that at some point. You know, I do wonder how much of the turmoil and everything going down right now in Venezuela is impacting Team Venezuela, and how much they are going to field the team. From all accounts, I think they're still going to field the team. But it is interesting how silent the news has come from Team Venezuela and manager Omar Lopez in terms of who is going to be on that roster. But I think those within the Rockies would love to see Tovar be on Team Venezuela, be a part of something much bigger, be a part of a winning culture, and bring that back to Denver with him. Jonathan Morris, Rockies will be good this year. They're definitely going to be better than last year. I guarantee it. And I'll leave it at that. Also in the chat, love the moves the Moneyball Rockies have been doing so far. Not sure we're going to beat the Dodgers, though, ever. Right? I mean, that's the beauty of baseball, is anyone can beat anyone on a given day. In fact, you know, could we see the Rockies win a series against the Dodgers again? Like, you know, they've been able to do? Yeah, sure. Like, that's just baseball, but it's going to be really hard. Some of the losses might be pretty brutal. We'll see. Yeah, no team can beat the Dodgers right now. They're going to lose 60 games next year. Like, give or take, they're going to lose 60 games. And if it requires them going to the postseason to lose that 60th game, so be it. But they'll lose 60 games. One more question before we get back on track. Do you think we're going to get a salary cap now? No, absolutely not. We don't need a salary cap. Major League Baseball does not need a salary cap. I have different thoughts on this in terms of what baseball needs. They might need a cap on players making $50 million or more. Certainly that would be helpful, but it does not benefit the product of Major League Baseball, and it doesn't help the Players Association. The players do not want a salary cap. Fans want it because it feels like it's going to make things a lot more fair, but that remains to be seen. Doesn't the NFL have a salary cap? Kansas City won a lot of Super Bowls. New England Patriots won a lot of Super Bowls. There's a salary cap. Warriors are always in the NBA Finals. There's a salary cap. So salary cap does not fix the problems. It's those teams that maybe aren't doing everything that they need to do, right? The Rockies are more of a problem for Major League Baseball than I think the Los Angeles Dodgers are, because by all accounts, they admitted they really lost sight of trying to innovate and trying to be relevant and just let the game pass by them for 5 years. That's more of a problem, right? So maybe you have some kind of creative cap where you can have only so many players making so much money. And while you might say, well, Patrick, you can just have deferred money. Sure. But a lot is made about deferred money. Players like deferred money. They're not opposed to it. Deferred money doesn't mean you don't have to pay. It just means that player gets paid later. The team still is paying. It's just going into a vault, and that money is staying there. So it's not as if you can have 26-man roster of everyone making $70 million, and we're going to do like Ohtani and pay them all $2 million. You can't do that. You know that we have a $52 million roster. No, you don't. You have, I can't even do the math on that. 70 times 26. We're talking, is it $1 billion? No, I think that's over $1 billion. You can't do that. You can't financially do that. So deferred money does not magically allow you to pay money you don't have. You still have to have that money. You still have to put that away. So there are those checks and balances in place. So we do need to create more competition, but it's more about the bottom keeping up than the top getting too far away, because we've had teams that have outspent everybody and nothing comes to fruition. Look at the Mets last year. They were right behind the Dodgers and they didn't even go to the postseason. What's the problem with what the Mets did? No one has a problem with that because it didn't work for them, right? We should have a problem with the teams like the Marlins and the Pirates who aren't spending, the A's who aren't trying to give back to the Players Association in that way and aren't spending the money that the league is giving them as part of some of the competitive balance that already exists. Luke, welcome in. Will we trade Zach Veen? Likelihood is obviously much more now than it's been in years past, as there's far too many outfielders right now in the system. And the previous regime was sort of fine with that and often said, quote, these things will sort themselves out. I think Paul DePodesta wants to sort these things out sooner than later. So instead of having a player like a Michael Toglia who gets waived and you get nothing for him, that asset is gone now forever. Drew Romo, who was your second pick in the 2020 draft, a competitive balance pick after the first round, you got nothing for. Ryan Rollison, you got nothing for. You can't afford to do that with your assets when you're a smaller market club. You have to get something for them. So if Yankiel Fernandez and Zach Veen have no future on the Rockies going forward, or it very much seems like they're not going to, they need to get traded, because coming from behind is Jared Thomas, Cole Carrick, Robert Callis. There are a lot of guys. They need to sort those things out. So yes, it is a greater likelihood than anything that the likes of Veen, Fernandez, throw Beck into that conversation, Brenton Doyle. Right now there's 9 outfielders, I believe, on the 40-man roster. And I think you're probably only going to see 4 of them on the 40-man roster this time next year. That's sort of a bold take for me. We will see. So getting on to some other baseball topics, Michael Lorenzen over the weekend, or when he was added officially, at the end of last week, actually, placed on the 40-man roster need to be created. So Bradley Blalock ends up getting the short straw. Blalock was acquired in July of 2024 at the trade deadline with righty pitcher Eugenio Herrera, who almost immediately had Tommy John surgery. You haven't seen much of him in the minor leagues. In a very surprise deal for Nick Mears. That was a strange one, but he made a solid impression in 2024, and he spun 16 and 2/3 innings pitch in his first 3 starts as a big leaguer, allowing just 6 runs. That's a 3.24 ERA for Blalock. It was really good. Opened the 2025 season as the long reliever, and unfortunately started that infamous 21-0 game against the Padres on Mother's Day Eve that cost Bud Black his job. 3 2/3 innings pitched, 12 runs allowed. I thought, oh, let's throw those out. Let's throw that performance out, because maybe that's skewing his 9+ ERA. But even if you remove that from the totals, we're looking at an 8.01 ERA. And then you've got 6 starts from August to September where he had a 12.27 ERA. I sort of wonder if that period where someone was making the decisions behind the scenes, because there's nobody in front of the scenes making the decisions, because Bill Schmidt was gone and there was no president of baseball operations. There was no general manager. But I wonder if DePodesta, he was around earlier, if he would have designated Blalock over someone like Orion Rolison. I don't know. Rolison made some changes late in the season. His final 6 outings from late August to the end of the year had a 3.18 ERA. Maybe, don't know. Blalock's still only 25 years old. There's some peripheral numbers that suggest, hey, maybe there could be something there. We'll see. Luke in the chat. Good to see you, bud. Tommy Tanis on the Drew Goodman podcast, saying more of the things we're hoping for. Yeah, that was fantastic. I listened to that Sunday morning on a long run, and yeah, very insightful. Highly recommend you listen to that conversation with Tommy Tanis to get an understanding of what his background is like and what he is looking to do, and hearing not just things that you hope, not just things you want to hear, but hearing from somebody that is very high up now as an assistant general manager in the Rockies organization, saying things and talking about baseball in a way that we really haven't heard a ton of assistant general managers, president of baseball operations. We haven't heard tons of folks in the front office talking that much in depth about their love of baseball and their experiences and the things that they've seen and the things that they want to do. So that's a big one right there. So Luke, thank you. I did want to mention that. Highly recommend you check out the Drew Goodman podcast for that. I think Goodman even touches on the Kyle Tucker contract, which when that happened, it was like, of course he's going to the Dodgers. 4 years, $240 million, not 10 years, not like, hey, he's going to spend his career in LA now for 240. 4 years. $30 million is deferred. $64 million signing bonus. So I'm not really sure how his contract is going to be structured. I prefer roster resource on Fangraphs for my payroll information, because I know some of the other ones have had a couple things wrong here or there. I feel like it's just easier to understand the format at roster resource. They have Kyle Tucker making $76 million in his first 2 years of the deal. So perhaps it's $64 million to sign, $12 million in his actual salary, and then $76 million next year, and then only $44 million in years 3 or 4. I don't know how he's going to get by, but Tucker does have an opt-out after year 2, which if he does, and these numbers are accurate on roster resource, we're looking at $152 million for 2 years. That's a lot of money for Kyle Tucker. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why he was not interested in the reported 10-year, $350 million contract from the Blue Jays, because if he can opt out in 2 years, which has kind of been the move that a lot of Scott Boras clients have been navigating, where they sign maybe not that long-term deal they were hoping for, but it's still financially lucrative for them. They're allowed to opt out in the first couple of years. It allows them that other bite at the apple, and then they sign that sort of long-term deal like Alex Bregman did get from the Cubs. Not long-term like 7, 8, 9, 10 years long, but still long enough, paid well enough that when you couple those 2 deals together, it works out. So if we're looking at $152 million for Kyle Tucker for 2 years, then he just needs to make $200 million when he goes back out in the free agent market when he's 30 years old. So that's going to work out. Mets offered a reported 4 years, $220 million. And I think because Tucker took the Dodgers money, they panicked big time and spent 3 years, $126 million on Bo Bichette. That's wild. So, I do like the infield defense of the Mets right now with Simeon at second, Lindor at short, Bichette at third base, Jorge Polanco at first base. Will be a bit suspect, until I see him perform defensively. But Bichette gets 3 years, 126, when they could have kept Pete Alonso at 5 years, 155 before he signed with the Orioles. If they could do it again, would they have? I would hope that they would have brought back the polar bear. Speaking of large contracts, you might have seen this over the weekend, but Elly De La Cruz turned down over $200 million from the Reds. It would have been the largest contract in Reds history. GM Nick Krall said that it would have topped Joey Votto's club record 10-year, $225 million deal that was signed as an extension before 2012. And Elly De La Cruz betting on himself to be worth more than that. So you've got young players now saying $200 million, that's it. That's where we're at right now for superstar players, for sure. In the chat, I love Drew Goodman. Grew up listening to him every night. Glad he's still with the Rockies. Yeah, great guy. Love seeing him at the ballpark. Talked to him down at the winter meetings. And he's good baseball people. He's always got some good insight. He's always checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing. I do love me some Drew Goodman as well. Luck saying Scott Boras ruins baseball more than the Dodgers do. How does he ruin baseball? I don't know how he ruins baseball. He can be villainous. I understand how he might seem to be villainous and a bit cheesy when it comes to his free agents, but I don't know how he's ruining baseball. I do understand the sentiment about being villainous, sure, but I don't know that he's ruining baseball. He's getting more money for players, and when players get those mega contracts, it increases the likelihood of players who come next to get more contracts. So I'll tell you that the players do love Scott Boras. They do appreciate him. And I'm sure he might annoy some players if you're not with him. I imagine even if you are with Scott Boras, you might get annoyed by him. So again, villainous, annoying, can't argue with you with that. But bad for baseball, not exactly sure. But also adding in the chat, I do appreciate this. I'm scared for when Ethan Holiday is a free agent because Boras is his agent. That's right. Yeah, Boras is the agent to Ethan Holiday. So an extension for Ethan Holiday could be very hard to come by, especially if Ethan Holiday is everything everyone hopes that he is going to be. So we will see. Mets interested in Brenton Doyle. I do think that is really true. I also know that the free agent class over the next couple of years is not very good. So it could behoove the Rockies to sit and wait on some of their best assets for either the trade deadline this year or this time next year in the offseason. Could be. WBC News, Alex Bregman is in. So he just signs his big contract with the Cubs, decides that he wants to play. Aaron Judge, when he signed his big contract, because he was a free agent at the time, before the 2023 WBC, he actually opted to not play because he had just signed his big deal and said, hey, I want to be with my team and do that. Bregman saying, no, that's okay. I'm going to go play for Team USA, which is pretty great. Now they have a pretty loaded infield with Bobby Witt Jr. at short, Gunnar Henderson, who I thought was going to maybe play third base. He might play short and third. Bryce Terang is at second base. Not sure who's going to play first base for Team USA in that bunch. It's probably not going to be Ernie Clement, who has committed to the team and is with Team America, but I think they need to bring Pete Alonso in. That's going to be a big one. And Clayton Kershaw. It's really cool that Clayton Kershaw is going to finish up his baseball playing career. I mean, he really won't be finishing his baseball player career because when you think about it, every player is going to finish their baseball playing career with the Savannah Bananas now. So this is just it really counts part of his baseball playing career. Kershaw had wanted to play for Team USA in 2023, but was unable to because MLB could not get the insurance on him due to his injuries at that time, his injury history at that time, because all players need to get covered by insurance. Like when Edwin Diaz went down in 2023, the Mets need to be compensated for that in insurance. They're screwed in terms of their closer. That's it. He's just gone. You can't make up a all-star closer like that. There's no compensation, but at least financially, you can recoup those expenses. Well, if a guy has an injury history, no one's going to insure that player. So every player from the WBC is insured. And Clayton Kershaw probably isn't, but that's because his contract for 2026 is zero. He's retired. So no team is going to lose out on his services if he does get hurt. So Kershaw is free to play, free to get injured again. We'll see how he is used by manager Mark DeRosa. But I'm getting excited. There hasn't been a ton of WBC buzz. I imagine maybe during the Super Bowl, we'll see a WBC commercial. That would be awesome. I think that would get people really hyped because as soon as the Super Bowl's over, which that's 3 weeks from today, crazy to think about, but in 3 weeks from today, about this time even that I'm recording on Sunday night, it will be baseball season. It will be true. In the chat, I hope the Rockies will make another move. They absolutely need to bring in another starting pitcher, another veteran starting pitcher, and a first baseman of some sort, of some import. That almost has to happen. Is it true that the Rockies didn't let KB go to the Cubs reunion? I heard they didn't let him, and that the Rockies didn't even have a say in it. Not sure what to believe. Yeah, I think it was Sunday morning. I went to the 670 The Score, who had reported that the Rockies did not allow Kris Bryant to join that reunion, the 10-year anniversary of the 2016 team. And as I was on their page looking for that, it was not there. So I'm not sure if they took it down. I'm not sure if they were reporting on a different spot other than X, but both Patrick Saunders and Thomas Harding reached out to the Rockies, who confirmed that there was no truth in that. I could see how Kris Bryant would not want to go to an event like that. I don't know of any players who are on an active roster of one team and showing up at another team's fan fest. That just doesn't happen. I don't think anyone needs to tell Kris Bryant that maybe is a bad look. That's just the state of professional sports. It's just something that doesn't happen. Now, if there's a reunion down in Arizona or all those guys want to go on a trip together in Hawaii, like, okay, but that's not an official Cubs sanctioned event. And if all those guys are coming back, like John Lester, Anthony Rizzo, Dexter Fowler, you know what they all have in common? They're all retired. They're not signed to play for a team. So I would dispel that rumor altogether. Luke saying, who's off the 40-man when Willie becomes official? I did talk about that earlier on in the podcast. There's a couple candidates. I don't think Adiel Amador is, just because Castro does play the same position as Adiel Amador. I think there's still plenty of upside for him, especially the way that Amador finished the 2025 season down in Albuquerque. I think there's still some promise. I don't know that he will, be developed into an all-star caliber player, a one-time all-star kind of guy. But I think he's still young enough, and there's still enough other players. There's several relief pitchers that could probably get designated for assignment and slid through and kept within the organization and slid down into AAA. We'll see. McCade Brown skipped AAA entirely last year. Do you think he starts his year in AAA? Yeah, absolutely. You saw him get knocked around quite a bit. Did have some success as well. Look, he'll be in the mix to earn a place on the opening day rotation. Absolutely. Like there's enough of those young guys that could do it, that, with a good spring, maybe McCade Brown will start the season with the Rockies. We'll see if the Rockies do bring in another starting pitcher, which I think they intend to do, and I think they very well should do. If it's Freeland, Lorenzen, Chase Dollander, because he's healthy, I'm going to put him at number 3, and then probably Ryan Feltner at number 4, assuming he's healthy. By all accounts, he is healthy right now. And then you've got, you name it, for number 5, maybe even Gabriel Hughes, who's now on the 40-man roster. He wins that place in the rotation. So we'll have to wait and see with that. Another question in the chat. Did you see Yankees could let Bellinger leave if he doesn't take 5 years, 160? I think that might be the number. And the Mets, again, panicking like they do. I'm sure they would love to take Cody Bellinger from the Yankees. I mean, they already did it with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, but now to a much bigger player, a much more impactful player for the Yankees, who I don't really think have had quite a notable offseason so far for them. I think they'll be okay even without Cody Bellinger, but they do need to bring him back, and I think eventually that will work out. Colorado Talk Sports, good to see you, buddy. Get that channel going. Final thing worth discussing on this little bit of an extended edition, but I enjoy it. Appreciate all the questions. Hall of Fame class of 2026 is about to be announced on Tuesday nights. So spoiler alerts incoming. If you don't want to know who's going to the Hall of Fame or who might be going to the Hall of Fame, pause it, fast forward it. That's why I save this for the final segment. But right now, there is a Hall of Fame tracker, which some of you may or may not know about. Ryan Thibodeau tracks that because there are plenty sports writers out there who, once they submit their vote, say, hey, here's who I voted for. Here's why, right? It's a good opportunity to get some eyes on your newspaper, on your publication, whatever it may be, and they make their ballot public. Well, Ryan Thibodeau keeps track of all these. He's got a team of people, just good citizens, good Samaritans out there that say, hey, here's another one that I saw somewhere. This is who this guy have. He's got it on a big spreadsheet. And so we only know the public ballots. We only know the ballots that have been made public. The ones that are private usually are a little more conservative. They're more small hall. They usually vote for less. Sometimes they vote for nobody. Sometimes they leave absolute no-brainer first ballot Hall of Famers off of their list. That's the way it goes. And just before I started recording this podcast, I tried to get the latest update, and I think the site had crashed because there were so many people clicking on it. CC Sabathia last year was even saying that he was going there every 3 minutes to update to see if there were any changes, see if there were any new ballots that had been announced, that had been unveiled by the writers from the BBWAA. So it's fantastic. So it might be a few days before you get to see the specifics, but by that point, by Tuesday night, you'll get to see, you know, what the percentage breakdown is. So Carlos Beltran looking good to get into the Hall of Fame. Andrew Jones, possibly good. He's kind of on the cusp because, again, the private ballots are usually more conservative and are not as generous with the ballots. You can vote up to 10 people on a ballot, and history shows there's always 10 players on every single ballot that are Hall of Famers. And you're only a Hall of Famer if you're in the Hall of Fame, right? So how can I say that about the 2024, the 2023 ballot? Well, go back and look at the 1940 ballot, the 1950, the 1970, the 1982, and you'll see 15 to sometimes 30 names of Hall of Famers. They maybe didn't get voted in. They might not have gotten that 75% you need to get in from the writers, but they got in eventually through a veterans committee. So with that logic, every voter, I think, should be voting for 10. I still have about 5.5, 6 years until I get a vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame as a member of the BBWAA. And it's my intent to vote for 10 every single ballot. So even if there's only 5 definite Hall of Famers to me, who's the next 5 that probably should be in? Because you know what? Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing some of their importance. And that's part of the beauty of why this process gets dragged on. And, oh, this guy's on again for the 7th year and the 8th year and the 10th year. That's part of the beauty is as a player stays on a ballot longer and longer, more people begin to talk about the player. More people begin to understand their importance, their relevance, their impact on the game, on a team, on a franchise. And you say, you know what? This guy is kind of important when it comes to telling the story of baseball. Might not be Willie Mays, might not be Stan Musial, might not be Lou Gehrig type of importance. Might not be Roberto Clemente, Jackie Robinson, Ichiro Suzuki, you name it. But there are levels to Hall of Famers, and there's always 10 on every single ballot. So we'll see. Beltran looks good. Jones, probably. Chase Utley, close to 70%. And then Felix Hernandez and Andy Pettitte are the only other ones over 50%. At the time of recording, the 2 Rockies, Matt Kemp and Daniel Murphy, no votes. No votes whatsoever. Ryan Braun, who's Rockies adjacent because he cost Troy Tulowitzki the 2007 NL Rookie of the Year award. He's at only 5 votes, so he's going to be off the ballot almost immediately. So totally shut out. And let's not forget, of course, Jeff Kent selected at the winter meetings last month in December, going into the Hall of Fame via the Veterans Committee. And there's nothing on any of these players' plaques that says a Veterans Committee versus BBWAA. And maybe there's an inside joke between the Hall of Famers or say like, oh yeah, you had to get in this way. But no, once you're in that club, man, you're in that club. You're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. Say what you will about Harold Baines. Say what you will about Jim Cott. They're Hall of Famers, period. In the comments, oh, Matt Kemp. Forgot about Matt Kemp. LOL. Absolutely. Daniel Murphy on the ballot. Yeah, there's those two. There's always about one on the ballot. I have to go and look. I don't have my spreadsheet up right now about like who are the next Rockies to get on a ballot. I think, Wade Davis will more likely than not get on a ballot. And it's not all retired players. First and foremost, you have to have 10 years of 10 seasons in the majors. It doesn't have to be 10 years of service time. And then they only select a certain amount. It's not exactly like 30 or 32. It also depends on how many players roll over. Right? If there's a ton from the previous year that stayed on the ballot, there might only be room for so many. So Wade Davis is going to be one in the next couple years. After that, I don't really think there's going to be any former Rockies coming up in 2027 or 2028. We just had Cargo and Troy Tulowitzki last year. And I think Tulo maybe got a vote. Cargo got shut out. Let's see, next year's ballot. Well, John Axford becomes eligible for the ballot, but I don't think he is going to make that by any stretch of the imagination. I'll talk eventually this week about maybe what next year's ballot looks like. But I'm going through this list of 2027, and I'm not really seeing any former Rockies. Trevor Bauer's name is on this list. Jonathan Lucroy and Dexter Fowler both are eligible to be on the ballot. I don't know that either of them are going to make it with the amount of names that have accrued more wins above replacement and have been all-stars in more seasons, and that has a lot of value. Another Castro Starlin, but certainly no other Rockies besides John Axford. And yes, Wade Davis. Davis is pretty low on this list in terms of wins above replacement, but he was a part of. Wasn't he a part of 2 World Series winning teams? No, he just won in 2015 with the Royals. He did not win with the Cubs. He joined after in 2017. So maybe his name gets placed on that ballot. 2028. Let's see that list. Oh, 2028 is going to be Pujols. Don't think Robinson Cano is going to get in. And I'm scanning the list for another Rocky. Greg Holland, pretty low on that list. He probably won't make the ballot. Mark Melanson is just a notch above him. He is was born and raised in Golden, Colorado, so he's got those ties, but no on him. 2029, assuming all these guys stay retired. Miguel Cabrera, Joey Votto, Zach Greinke. I could make for a really good class, although, does Greinke maybe get left out in the cold and has to go in year 2? We'll see. I'm looking at this list, and I'm not even seeing a Rocky for 2029. Hey, Mike Moustakas. He was a Rocky for a minute. Maybe he gets on a ballot because he was a big part of that 2015 Royals club. You also have, which I assume this guy is retired, Colin McHugh. You don't remember him. That's okay. He pitched 4 games for the Rockies in 2013. He was the guy that the Rockies got for Eric Young Jr. Yeah, that's right. That actually, that was a pretty good deal for the Rockies there. Corey Dickerson on that list, Brad Hand, and Alex Colomé. Wow. So there's 5 on the 2019 ballot of former Rockies. I'm naming some names. And while I'm at it, the last one the last possible one, the 2030 ballot. We've got, why is Garrett Cole's name on this list? He's not retired. He just must have just automatically registered because he hasn't played. Anthony Rizzo, Anthony Rendon. Not a great group there. Charlie Blackmon. He will undoubtedly be on the Hall of Fame ballot for that first year in 2030. And I think he gets some votes. The question is, does he get 5%? If he gets 5% of votes, that would be huge. And it really depends on who's going to still be on the ballot at that point. But Matt Holliday didn't even get 5%. And I think Matt Holliday has a modest to long shot Hall of Fame resume. It's better than you might think. And again, compared to other people from that time, you can look and say, maybe. Same thing with Andres Galarraga. If all the great first basemen from the 90s were on PEDs and you're not going to put them in the Hall of Fame, you got to put Andres Galarraga in the Hall of Fame and look where his numbers are at. Pretty damn good. Who else do we have? I'm seeing Brian Shaw's name. I don't even think he's officially retired. So that's probably not going to happen on the 2030 ballot. But yeah, Charlie will be the next real true Rocky to be on a Hall of Fame ballot. So yes, Zach Greinke, you hadn't heard that name in a while. He's a Hall of Famer. He's going to get in. He's not Justin Verlander, Clayton Kershaw Hall of Famer, but he's that next tier. Luke asking, have you ever done a show on Rockies records that may never be broken? No, I have not ever done anything like that. There's certainly a handful, because we know how baseball evolves, and the style of play definitely changes over time. So there are going to be ones out there that are just not approachable, especially with the humidor, right? So let's finish up with a couple more in the chat. While the innocent, any Rockies playing for any countries in the WBC? I believe, to my knowledge, there's none. Right now, there are 0 Rockies on any WBC rosters. I think Tovar is going to be quite possibly the only one. I mean, maybe Willi Castro now. He gets on that Puerto Rico roster. There's potential for that. Could a Jimmy Herget get added? I think there's only room for one more American on the Team USA roster. And also, if your grandparent was from a country, you can play for them. So if Canada needs a reliever and Jimmy Herget's grandmother was from Canada, then you could do that. Like, I think Ian Desmond, I want to say maybe his grandmother was from Canada, perhaps. Don't hold me to that. I might be making that up. But I imagine Ian Desmond probably could go for the World Baseball Classic. I'm sure he wouldn't mind something like that. Luck say if Tovar plays for Venezuela, I would root for them right after USA. Yeah, you want a team to be able to root for besides the USA. It's like when the World Cup comes next summer. You're like, okay, USA number 1. Maybe England. You're going to go after that. Belgium's always fun. But if you're from a certain place, I know there's play in games, so we still don't even have the full World Cup field. But some of my background, my grandmother's side on my mom's side, my grandmother's side, my grandma on my mother's side is Slovakian, so Slovakia is still in it, and the Republic of Ireland. My name's Patrick. Look how pasty I am. You can see that. Go Ireland, right? Like, those would be the other teams after that. So that's a good one. I don't believe Elon Leishman is going to be participating with Team Israel. Did talk with both their manager, their general manager at the winter meetings, and they would love to have him back. They love for Jake Bird to participate with Team Israel. They're hoping maybe Alex Bregman would play with Team Israel before he made the announcement that he'd be with Team USA. So we'll see. I imagine there will be at least somebody, because I'm not going to say it's important for the Rockies to not be that team that has no representation in the WBC, because I don't know if how much of a push that is, but I'm sure Major League Baseball wants every team to be represented, right? Because that's going to increase buy-in. Like, let's say, God forbid, USA gets knocked out early, or even if USA is still in it for a while, are you going to be watching all those other games? Maybe not. But if Ezequiel Tovar is on Team Venezuela, now you're watching that game a little bit more. Now you have a little bit more investment. And maybe you're watching the final day in which, oh man, Venezuela needs to win by 4 runs, and we need this other game between Colombia and Great Britain. We need Colombia to lose. So now I'm going to tune into Colombia and Great Britain. Like, there's all of those different machinations that go into, following the WBC, that if your team has a player or coach participating in it, you're going to be more invested. And so I think it will happen. I think it absolutely will happen. Rocks Chalk, pitching coach, for sure going to bring someone onto Team Israel, right? Yeah, we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. I imagine somebody will. Who that is, don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. But when that news does break, I'm going to be all over it over on the social medias at Patrick D. Lyons on X and Blue Sky, or rather, where am I? Where is it? X? Just X is at Patrick D. Lyons. At Patrick D. Lyons MLB on Blue Sky and TikTok, and the Rockies Insider channel over on YouTube. Appreciate everybody in the chat asking those questions, making what I thought was going to be a 25-minute show into double the length. That's the passion that Rockies fans have. That hopefully, you'll have that outlet this year, and it'll be a lot more fun. It certainly can't be less fun. It certainly can't be equally as fun as it was last year. It's going to improve for sure. You guys deserve a winning team. You guys deserve to have something fun. Come home after a long day's work and see a couple wins. And I think that's going to increase this year, as it will for the next couple years. We'll have to wait and see, but certainly you feel better now than you have at any of the last 3 years, right? Appreciate that. Rockies Nation, that's what it's all about. So appreciate all your support, all of your momentum. But unfortunately, as you know, that kind of momentum, it's only as good as my next show. So of course, I'll talk to you tomorrow.